If you've ever thought about switching jobs, you know it can be a tough decision that comes with a lot of questions.
Am I in the right place? Could I do better? Are the problems I'm experiencing in this job, in this company, on this team, are they too big? Or, more to the point, is that job over there going to give me much more happiness?
How do you answer those questions? It's like the old punchline says, very carefully. Hi, I'm Paul Haberstrood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Should you stay or should you go? It's one of the biggest questions you'll ask in your work life. Later in the show, we kick off our summer how-to series by looking at what to consider before switching jobs. Up first, we get up close and personal with personal finance writer Rob Carrick. How much money do you need to retire? Is it smarter to rent a house or buy? Should you invest in Nortel? Yeah, Rob Carrick's been around for a while. He's covered all those questions and thousands more over nearly 3 decades as the personal finance columnist for the Globe and Mail. Recently, he hung up his keyboard. After writing so much about retirement, he figured he'd give it a try. But we weren't about to let him hit the pickleball court without having a chat. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Paul.
So, Rob, you've been writing about personal finance since 1998. When you think about what people were interested in then compared to now, did the topics change? Did they evolve over the years?
They very much did. Personal finance used to be, when I first started, it was all about sort of helping affluent people become more affluent, how to get your mortgage paid off, how to have a fully paid off retirement. But it sort of became broader as time went by. How do you afford to just live your life? How do you afford to get into the housing market in the first place? How can you start off as an investor if you don't have a lot of money? Like in 2008-09, the global financial crisis was happening, and I noticed that millennials were getting disenfranchised in the economy, and I started to write about that. And I think that sort of coincided with a much greater interest on the part of young people in personal finance. And I think Gen Z has picked up on that theme. So yes, it very much has broadened. I mean, seniors are acutely interested in personal finance because they've built up this retirement savings. They've got to make it last and hopefully, keep themselves on a good, well-funded track until the end. But younger people are realizing they need to up their game as well. And I think that's happening.
You touched on it a bit there, but I'm just wondering, am I right in thinking that you were writing more about young people? And why was that so intentional, if that is the case?
Well, it became intentional because, first of all, I didn't think that the broader population knew what was happening with young people. I mean, do you remember back in 08 and 09, the term boomerang kids? Young people were graduating from university or college or trades or whatever, and they were struggling to find good paying full-time jobs where they could start their career, and they were having to move back home. And then society was aghast at this. What's wrong with the young people of today? And what I tried to do was to show that there were some definite challenges in the economy that were causing this. And I think that storyline has become normalized, and now it's quite normal for people to move back home after they move out. And that suggests to me that we need to work on the personal finances of the nation to help young people get on a successful track, after graduation. And if they can't do that, what can we do to help them, and how can we ensure that they get good outcomes over time?
Well, yeah, because there was the narrative earlier on when you talk about the boomerang generation of, they're just lazy, or the kids don't know how to work. In my day, we really put our shoulder to the grindstone. And now, I mean, it has become sort of just more well-known that there are these structural challenges. I mean, housing kind of being first and foremost among those. Do you feel like you sort of were a brick in the wall of that conversation?
I think I was, but I think there's still a lot more bricks that have to be laid down, because the boomer generation is very much, as you said a moment ago, what's wrong with these young people today? We had these challenges. We had like the double-digit interest rates, which was phenomenally challenging. But housing prices were very small back then, and interest rates almost steadily declined after that. And young people today are really up against it. When you compare the trajectory of incomes against the trajectory of home prices, there's just this giant and ever-increasing gap between the two of them. And I think that is a function of this incredible demand for housing. Young people want into the housing market, but they can't get in. And that is a storyline that is playing out now and will continue to play out. I mean, in many ways, the success of the new federal government under Prime Minister Carney is going to be defined by how do they address the affordability issues young people feel, particularly in housing.
I know it's early days for that government, but do you have a sense when you look at which way the wind is blowing when it comes to things like housing affordability and what direction the country is taking? Do you have a sense at this point whether you think things might be starting to move in a better direction?
They're moving in a better direction statistically. I think RBC Economics takes periodic looks at housing affordability, and they saw some incremental improvements recently. I mean, in some cities, in some of the most expensive cities, house prices have stabilized. They may be down a little bit, or at least they're stagnating. That's helpful, but I don't think people feel it. I don't think there's been a dramatic improvement where young people are thinking, you know what, I can get into the housing market now. I couldn't before, but now I can. That feeling is not out there, and until that happens, and it may never happen, I think we're going to be stuck in this loop of people wanting to get into the housing market and feeling frustrated that they either can't or it's going to take them much longer than they thought.
Rob, if you step back and look at your career over the last nearly 30 years, you've interviewed just a ton of people. You've had a ton of conversations. Is there one piece of advice that someone gave you or a thought that someone gave you in one of those interviews you thought, you know what? That one right there, man, that is a chestnut. I got to tuck that one away.
Well, what I would tell you is that I have spoken and exchanged views with a lot of people, and what really struck me is not some piece of advice, but a reflection on the situation people are in, and it's that a lot of people are doing everything they can. They're doing as many right things as they possibly can, and they're not getting ahead. They feel that they are losing ground. And I think that's a relatively new phenomenon. It might be tied to what happened with inflation a couple of years ago, but it alarms me because I wonder how can these people sort of turn things around and start to get some traction, build prosperity. And I've had it explained to me that I am trying to save money, but buying groceries, renegotiating our mortgage at a higher rate, we have nothing left to save. And I'm wondering, how does that turn around? That was sort of occupying my mind as I sort of put in my final 24 months as Globe Personal Finance columnist.
Out of all the topics that you wrote about, some you would go back to, some were definitely fresh every week. Is there any one topic that when you wrote about it, you knew it was going to push people's buttons?
Okay, there's two topics. One is renting versus owning a house. People just love to hash that over, and I have written many, 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 many columns on it, and there's always furious reactions. What I tried to do was to show that renting wasn't a financial death sentence. That was really my main goal. But if you even talk semi-positively about renting, people see it as an attack on the idea of owning a home, and how dare you say such a thing. So there was always a strong debate over that. And the second topic that generated a lot of debate was about the Canada Pension Plan and when to start your CPP retirement benefits. The standard age is 65. You can take it as early as 60 and take less, or you can wait till 70 and get more. And all the experts, actuaries, people who crunch numbers for a living, say wait till 70. It's so worth it because of how much more you'll get. But people just don't want to take that advice. They prefer to take it at 65 and maybe 60 if possible. And so there was constant tension on that topic as well.
And where did you come down as you tried to sort of negotiate that? And people were like, I want to take it at 60, damn it. What did you say? I
said, wait till 70. You will get substantially more money. And this is locked in money. It's secure. It's as secure as the CPP, which is very secure. And you're going to get more of it if you wait till 70. It seemed logical to me, and it seemed logical to the actuaries. But the gut says, you know what? I think I want that money in my hands sooner, and I'll just do that.
You've written a lot of columns about retirement. You've thought a lot about retirement. Did that change the way that you've approached your own retirement?
Yeah, it did. One thing I learned is that people obsess over how much they should have in their savings so they know whether they're ready to retire. And the financial industry like stokes us all the time. They do these surveys. People said they thought they needed $1 million, $2 million, $3 billion to retire. But the real question is, how much do you need to retire? So I was told that by financial planners, and so I started to think, how much will I need? So I did up a budget of how much we spend now and how much my wife and I would likely spend in retirement, and then if that's how much do we need to have saved to be able to afford to spend that much, and that sort of guided our thinking about when I could retire. And I should add that we have a financial planner, and he helped crunch those numbers.
So after all the columns you've written, is there one piece of advice you could narrow down that you would give to people?
Yeah, it's that you have to be able to say no to spending at certain times. I think there's just too much yes, 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 I'll spend this. And I think that it's killing our finances. I mean, I hate to be the negative guy and say, don't do this, but I think we need to flex our no muscles a little bit more, and try to live within our means a little bit more. Not all the time. Everybody should have a splurge and vacations and all that stuff. I am not saying that personal finance should be all sacrifice, but I see the way people are spending. Like and I'll give you a little sample. I get these blasts from JD Power about what's happening with car prices and car loans, and the average car payment is above $800 a month. And I'm thinking that's just a heck of a lot of money to spend on a vehicle. I would never spend that much on a car payment. And I'm thinking maybe if you bought a cheaper vehicle, you could have a lower payment and more money to spend on other stuff.
Well, Rob, thank you for all of that. And, congratulations on retirement and what's next.
Thanks, Paul.
Rob Carrick was the personal finance columnist for the Globe and Mail for nearly 30 years. He recently retired. On your radio and by podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Havershrud. Do you ever daydream at work about doing something else? Or doing what you're doing somewhere else? Great, but if you really start gaming it out, you can end up with more questions than answers. Am I really doing the right thing? Amy Gallo is the author of Getting Along, How to Work with Anyone, Even Difficult People, and the co-host of the podcast, Women at Work. We asked for her advice on what to consider before changing jobs.
The question of whether and how to switch jobs is a perennial question for people. Am I in the right place? Could I do better? Are the problems I'm experiencing in this job, in this company, on this team, are they too big? Or, more to the point, is that job over there going to give me much more happiness? Figuring it out is a challenge, partly because we have all of these cognitive biases, one of which is to think that the thing that's over there is much more appealing. And that is often in colloquial terms called the grass is greener effect. And so we think that there is a job that would be better for us, a role that would be more exciting or fulfilling. And that may be true, but a Harris poll conducted for USA Today found that 1 in 5 workers who quit their job wished they actually had remained in their old position. I've seen this firsthand with people who I've coached or talked with who were so excited to get out of their current job, and then the one that they thought was going to be much better turned out not to be. So you have to keep that in mind, that these job switchers aren't finding, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Oftentimes they're finding something that isn't what they expected and doesn't meet as many of their needs as their previous job did. The best way to start this process is to make a list of what matters to you. And don't have any judgment about that. If salary is what matters most to you, fine, make that the top of the list. If it's flexibility in your role, great, make that the top of your list. But make a list of the things that matter most to you. So now you're starting to look out there. That doesn't mean you're just looking at job listings. You're also talking to people who maybe work in companies you're interested in. The good news about this process is that people love to talk about themselves. And so if you reach out to someone and say, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your career and your job, oftentimes people will say yes, even if it's a cold call. In an ideal world, you could be very upfront with your current boss, your current employer, that, oh, I'm looking around. And that could be a nice conversation in which they allow you to do that and support you if you decide to leave. But that is rarely the case. More often than not, it makes most sense to keep your job search to yourself. This can be exhausting because it means maybe using a sick day to go for an interview, or taking some time off to really focus on your research on what roles or companies you'd like to obtain. If you start interviewing for a job, or say send out a resume and cover letter, you can also say in that cover letter, or even just in an email to the company, to the HR manager or the hiring manager, just a heads up, my current employer doesn't know that I'm looking for a job, so I'll ask you to keep this confidential. It's a very standard thing. Most HR managers or hiring managers are used to that request and can respect it. Once you have that new job offer, it's tempting to see what your current company, your current employer will come back with in terms of a counteroffer. A better title, a different role, more salary. The conventional thinking on this has always been that that's a good thing, to listen to that counteroffer and potentially accept it. But more recent thinking really is, you're leaving that job for a reason. You made this search, you started to interview for jobs, you went after these positions and got these offers because something wasn't right about your current job. So just because they give you a higher salary, a bonus perhaps, or more responsibility isn't going to fix those other things that were already bothering you. So again, be clear-eyed about what it is you're leaving and what you will get from the new job. And don't be tempted by a counteroffer that may please you in the short term, but in the long term may leave you wishing you had gone for the new thing.
Amy Gallo is the co-host of the podcast, Women at Work. On next week's installment of our Summer How-To series, how to really nail it when you start a new job. The show is based in Calgary. The Cost of Living is produced by Danielle Nerman, Blair Sanderson, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haversrud. Thanks for listening.